Hey everybody, Mo here, and today I'm bringing you guys my first tier list video for Riftbound, the League of Legends card game. It is September 1st, which means it has been 1 month since the official launch of Riftbound in China. It's been about a month and a half since we've had the entire card list available to us globally. It's about 2 months before it actually launches in America and launches globally outside of China. And then it's about 3 months before we actually have our first major in the United States and major tournaments outside of China. There's already been a couple of China majors, like I said, the last 2 weekends. There's 2 more coming up this upcoming weekends. So I wanted to make a tier list. I felt like now's a pretty good time, now that we've had a significant amount of times with the cards. We've seen some actual tournaments and tournament results with the cards. And what I'll do is go over, you see the tiers here on the side, we'll get into those specifically, but this tier list is for tournaments, competitive, not for 2v2 or 4v4. This is just 1v1 competitive formatting. If I were to be going to a tournament, this weekend, or had a tournament coming up, this is how I rank these decks. Or if I were to watch a tournament, this is how I rank the decks for those reasons. If you want a full meta recap, I post weekly meta articles, Meta Monday, starting today, actually, over on tactor.com, and I'll have a link to that in the description below, where I effectively cover what's going on in the meta. I recap any tournaments or big events that just happened over the weekend, and then I give a look into what could change in upcoming metas, like what decks to look out for, what decks should be doing better or are doing good for me that you should try out and people should try out. And so make sure to go check out that article for the full Meta Monday update. Again, every Monday over on Tactor.com. As well as go join my Metafy real quick. One last plug here before we get into the actual video. I have complete sideboard guides over there. I'm going to have coaching up there within the next day or two for pricings and all that stuff. I will be having a sub service where I think it's $5 a month. You can sub to my Metafy, and you will get at least one... I'll be posting one kind of uncut scrim session video in there of me and my scrim partners, so you'll get to see insights of what it's like for the high-level competitive scrims, the refining. Like, we'll be doing deck refinement, deck building, deck, like matchup determining and stuff like that. So if you wanted to look into what that looks like, you'll be getting those videos at least once a week on for the subscribers, as well as other benefits as well that you can check out over on Metafy. I'm not going to list them all here. I just want to get into this tier list video because everyone loves a good tier list, and I love making tier lists. They're fun. Everyone loves tier lists, right? So first thing we'll do is we'll go over the tiers here. Obviously, it's not tiers S through D or whatever. I hate tier lists that say that because those don't mean a lot to me. I like when the tiers have actual names, whether it's win rates or just whatever, like your, what would you call it? The, requirements for being in the tiers, not just random paper letters. So, I'll start at the top. So I have expect to win majors. So these are the decks that you would expect to win. Like if you go to a tournament this weekend or you go to watch a tournament, it is the most likely decks to win. Most of the time, it's the most likely decks to be played because people share that sentiment of spoiler alert, we'll say Kai'Sa's one of them. She's been one of the most played decks in the last 2 tournaments. She's won the last 2 tournaments. Kai'Sa's a very easy champion you could put in an expect to wins major category. The next one is likely to win a major, but has some clear flaws. These are the decks that aren't, the most top tier, guaranteed to play. They're not going to be the highest win rate champions often, but these are decks that, like it says, can win tournaments. If it won a tournament, you wouldn't really be surprised that it won, but not everyone is bringing it, or it's not the most likely to win the tournament because there's usually, a couple of things that would likely stop it or is consistently stopping it from winning tournaments. But with the right bracket or with, a decent amount of variance on its side, it can win a tournament. And you wouldn't be surprised by it. Next is can win a major, potentially, but most likely it's going to be out in top 16 and top 32. This is going to be kind of like your, I wouldn't be surprised if I day 2'd with this deck. Maybe the kind of, if you want to use tiers, like the lower tier 2 decks, like high tier 3 sometimes, but usually it's going to be your lower tier 2 decks that can win majors, and if it won a major, it'd be surprising but understandable. It'd be like, this deck won the major, and people would be like, oh wow, that's super sick, and then it'd be like, I understand it, like why it wins, but you know, it'd be kind of surprising, but most likely out in the top 16 or top 32 category. There's one champion specifically that I'm thinking of for this that, you know, is a great criteria, and we will go over why. And then last few categories are you can day 2 if you have good matchups and variants day 1, but, you know, you don't plan to day 2. Like, you need a lot of good stuff going in your favor, and then if you get the good stuff in your favor, you can make the day 2, but you're likely not going to make it far in day 2 in single elim. You're not going to make it into the top cuts after making it into day 2, because you will be outclassed by every other deck around you, unless you again continue to just have really good variants and matchups. The last one says most likely can't day 2, so this is even, but there just aren't good enough matchups for you, or the amount of variance and luck you would have to get via matchups and just high rolling on your deck to make day 2 is just not likely overall, so you're not going to do that. And then the last tier is your early lunch category. These are the decks that you just shouldn't bring, that no one expects to not just make day 2, but even be like close to being in the bubble for day 2. It's the decks that you put on stream on rounds 1 and 2 because there's, you know, it's 0 and 0, so it's not lost yet, and then maybe you put it on round 2 because it went 1 and 0 and you want to get it on stream before it immediately loses and goes 1-2, right? It's your early lunch decks. These are the decks that you play if you don't really care about the tournament and you just want to go have an early lunch and don't mind getting an early lunch because you started the tournament 0-2 or 0-3. So with those explanations out the way, let's get into the tier list. I'm going to actually go from bottom up, because I think that's more fun. We could go top bottom, I don't know, whichever one you guys find more interesting, let me know in the comments below. But I like going from the bottom up because it gets the kind of the super obvious ones out of the way, and once you kind of get towards this top here is where a lot of decisions start to get changed between players and the community members, where it's like, oh, this deck can win, but mostly top 16 versus like, oh, it's super likely to win, or maybe you put like a super likely to win in the expected, or an expected deck in the likely to win, but has some flaws, etc. So those are fun to me. So I'll start at the bottom. We will go with the early lunch category. Right now, I'm going to include the Proving Grounds champions. This really falls under two categories. Two champions. This is going to be Garen and Lux. These champions are early lunch legends. These decks are not good. You will not expect to make day 2 with these decks. You don't expect to go 3-0 with these decks, to be quite honest with you. A little bit of the reasons why is Garen doesn't do a whole lot of anything. His legend ability is like not real. You very rarely are in a spot to even have that many units in play, and then to have that many units in play and then conquer successfully with still 4+ units alive to conquer is just something that's either not going to happen, or something went so bad for the opponent that any other legend would be winning even more in this spot for Garen. He's also an orange-yellow legend, which you should just be playing Set. Set is also orange-yellow, but has a really good ability box, really good chosen champion, really good signature spell. Just any type of deck you could possibly make with Garen, you could just make with Set, and the deck would be better. There's no reason to play Garen. And then Lux is very similar. Lux is the same colors as Victor, which if you want to play any type of blue-yellow deck, you can just simply play Victor. These super big, control-y, spell-heavy Lux decks are not it right now. It can beat Master Yi specifically sometimes, is like the only reason that you can maybe say Lux is like a most likely can't day 2, because you might go like, you know, 1-5 or like 2-5 instead of just 0-5. For example, but yeah, I don't think she's really it. These color combinations don't work well with her ability. Her ability says if you play a spell that's big, you draw a card, but blue and yellow are the regions that don't care about card advantage because a lot of their good cards are already replacing themselves, so you just already have infinite cards in your hand most of the time, so you don't care about that. Next, we'll go with most likely can't day 2. So these are the decks that, you know, you might be able to day 2, but most likely is not going to. If somebody saw that your deck day 2'd on a stat sheet, they would be extremely excited and pogging out and want that deck on camera round 1 of day 2. But this is the deck that I would bet against, of like, I will put money that this deck won't day 2. And in that category is not a whole lot of decks, but I will put the Yasuo deck as a deck that most likely can't day 2. I don't think Yasuo is like atrocious and is like unplayable, but it's not good enough to really get anywhere. The color combination of green and purple is hard to figure out. I think is the biggest thing right now. People haven't figured it out. Purple is a very hard region to play overall. There's just a lot of nuance to it, and it'll be hard. And then green is similar if you're not just using green as a supportive color of doing like a pump spell charm type of counterspell game plan. If you're trying to use green in any way other than that, it can be hard to figure out, but Yasuo doesn't really need those types of cards because of the way the Yasuo decks try and function. So Yasuo is most likely not going to day 2. He's just not strong enough to get there. And then the only other champion I would really put in that list is going to be Jinx. So Jinx is a deck that most likely can't day 2 for multiple reasons. One, her aggro variant is fairly weak. It's actually just a strictly weaker and worse version of Annie, who is in the same colors. She's in purple and red just like Annie is, but Annie is much stronger and better at doing the aggro game plan because you get twice as much mana on your first 2 turns, or effectively twice as much mana on your first 2 turns compared to Jinx. So you can do more stuff and be more aggressive and have better game plans early to interact with stuff. And then if you want to play Jinx in like a mid-rangey style game plan with like Gorgers, Reanimates, the gear that stops your unit from dying, kind of like it's a set ability on a gear, that's fine and not horrible, but it's just going to be worse than playing Set or playing Lee Sin or playing any mid-range deck like that, a Volibear. So you can't beat Kai'Sa when you're playing Jinx, which is one of the huge tests right now of like, can win a major. It's going to be, can you beat Kai'Sa? If you cannot beat Kai'Sa, you cannot win a major. And if you can't beat Kai'Sa, you're most likely not going to day 2 unless you actually in order to day 2, you have to, and not beat Kai'Sa, you have to have a good Yi matchup, and you have to somehow dodge the most popular deck in the room. Or if you have a bad Kai'Sa and bad Yi matchup, you have to be able to stop everything else in the room and then also dodge 50% of the field, which is going to be the, can day 2 if you have really good variants. Right, and so that brings us to this, which is a can day 2 if you have very good variants. And there's pretty much 2 decks I would put in this tier. Kind of 3 decks, actually, now that I think about it. So the first one is going to be Annie. I think Annie can day 2 with really good matchups and variants in day 1, meaning if Annie dodges Kai'Sa enough, and then if Annie draws well enough to be able to beat Master Yi decks, or if the Master Yi decks are too greedy or don't know how to play against Kai'Sa, Annie can just win. On top of that, even if you do play against Kai'Sa with Annie, you can win that matchup. I've won that matchup before. You just have to high roll. Like, you have to have very good variant. So you have to not hit Kai'Sa a whole lot, which is the good matchups, and then the times you do hit Kai'Sa, you have to have a fairly good variance on your side. You have to draw well, or they have to draw poor. You can just steal games out of nowhere. If you're playing the Tryndamere Ride the Wind combos, you can steal games out of nowhere. There's just like a whole lot of things you can do in those respects with the Annie deck, which is why she's in this tier. I think this is perfect for her. Don't think she's good enough to win a major because I don't think you can consistently beat Kai'Sa and Yi enough to be able to win a major. But you can definitely make day 2 at the very least. Next one in this tier is going to be your Leona decks. So Leona can day 2 with good matchups and variants. She's not a most likely can't day 2 just because of your color combination of being green and yellow. If you are simply a really good mid-range deck in green and yellow, you will beat a lot of the other mid-range decks. You have game into Kai'Sa. You are not good into Kai'Sa by any means. You're probably like 45% at best into Kai'Sa, and that's assuming you have an amazing Leona list and the Kai'Sa list is super greedy and not good at dealing with your buff unit or your reaction spells. You can day 2 because you're going to be fairly good into a lot of the mid-range decks. You're going to beat Master Yi very well because that's what Leona does. Leona destroys Master Yi. Yellow Leona champion just solos the Master Yi legend and deck completely by herself. So the fact that you have an absurdly good matchup into the second most popular deck in the field, and that you will beat Victor because you are going to be playing a deck that plays units that are bigger than 3 early on, and Victor, that's something Victor can't deal with, is a unit bigger than 3 as starting on turn 2. You're going to be fine. You're also in, again, the yellow and green region, so you have yellow for salvage to deal with any Aurora decks. You have green for counter spells or pump spells to deal with any removal spells. And it's a very solid deck that can day 2. I don't think it can win because I don't think your Kai'Sa matchup is good enough for you to be able to, consistently beat Kai'Sa or high roll Kai'Sa. But you can day 2 if you either dodge enough Kai'Sa or get variants in like your 1 to 2 Kai'Sa matchups that you do hit because your Yi matchup is so good. And the last deck I'm going to put there is Ahri. For pretty similar reasons. A lot of these decks, what they have in common is they are just not good into Kai'Sa. At the moment, at least, with how they are built, they are not good into Kai'Sa. You can build them to be not horrible into Kai'Sa, but your biggest thing is you are going to be fine or good into Master Yi, fine or good into other decks like the rest of the meta, but because you lack so much game into Kai'Sa, it's going to be very hard for you to actually win a tournament because of how much Kai'Sa there is in the tournament. Ahri is very much a deck that can day 2 consistently if you just dodge enough Kai'Sa, or if you high roll the one Kai'Sa you played against and then beat the rest and dodge Kai'Sa the rest of the way. You'll get there. But I don't think you can win. I don't even think you... I don't think you can win because I don't think you can dodge enough Kai'Sa in day 2 or beat enough Kai'Sa by high rolling, 2 to 3 games in a row. And day 2, as we saw, was over 50% of the day 2. The 64 players were Kai'Sas in the most recent China tournament. So in order to be able to win a major, you either have to have a playable Kai'Sa matchup, which is what brings us to the next one. Earth can win a major, but most likely it's going to be knocked out in top 32 and top 16. So the best deck for this to show off is, oops, not you, get back down there. The best deck for this is going to be Volibear. Volibear can win a major. Volibear, if it won a major, people would be kind of surprised and be like, oh my god, how did Volibear win a major? But again, once you look into it, you realize that like, oh, that makes sense because you have a good Kai'Sa matchup. You have a playable Kai'Sa matchup. It's not likely the Volibear deck will win a major, but it can win a major. Most likely, you will make it to day 2, beat up on a Kai'Sa or 2, and then probably get knocked out in your top 16 round or in the first round of top 8 by a Victor, a Misfortune Aurora deck, potentially an aggressive Teemo deck. There are other decks that you can also just lose to yourself. You can low roll, and because right now day 2s are top 64 single elimination, if you do low roll even one time into a Kai'Sa, you will just lose. The deck is not consistent enough to win a major, but it can win a major because your Kai'Sa matchup is good enough to win a major. I fully expect there to be a Volibear that wins a major or does really well in a meta that is dominated by like 30% of the field being Kai'Sa. I will say it is just a strictly weaker version than Misfortune Aurora, and the reasons you are good as Volibear is because you play Aurora, because you play Red Volibear, you play big units that are hard to kill, and then you play this Aurora card that's hard to deal with. Misfortune just does that better. The only like true upside you have as Volibear is that you get the Sky Splitter card and you get the Red Volibear card as a chosen champion. Both of those are extremely good options, but the downside is you lack consistency. You will almost rarely ever turn 3 in Aurora in Volibear. I think like maybe in 1/3 of your games total, like at best I think it's like 1/3 of your games you're going to turn 3 in Aurora, whereas Misfortune has turn 3 Aurora 50% of the time. Is like just no reason to play it other than Misfortune. The next deck in this tier is going to be Lee Sin, for very similar reasons. I think Lee Sin can win a major, but the deck is not refined enough right now or good enough right now. It's slightly clunky. I haven't seen a deck that is truly like amazing, but it is on the up and up, and this is probably one of the takes that people will argue with or disagree with the most, outside of my Victor take, which you guys will see, is Lee Sin being this high, because I have played a lot of Lee Sin. I've been spending a lot of time refining Lee Sin. I've been scrimming a lot of Lee Sin recently. My next 2 videos this week are going to be a Lee Sin deck tech and then Lee Sin VOD reviews / scrim reviews with the deck, because Lee Sin has a very fine Kai'Sa matchup. Like, I've been winning against Kai'Sas and scrims. It's been doing work into Kai'Sas and scrims. Your Master Yi matchup can be slightly scary in the early game because Master Yi has so much power early, but if you can survive the first couple of turns into Master Yi without them basically having like 2x charm or a charm to completely stop a development of yours, like if they get to spend 1 mana charm and then maybe a pump spell to beat your 5 mana development, then obviously that's kind of a blowout. But if you can play around it or they don't have the charm, you will outscale the Master Yi and actually just be a better version of the Master Yi deck, which is amazing. Lee Sin is also fairly strong into the rest of the field. You are interesting into some of the Aurora decks. If you aren't fast enough, typically what happens is the Aurora decks will outscale you because they have Aurora and you can't really do anything about it if you don't hit it with exactly a sabotage before they Aurora you. And then a lot of the other matchups might be fairly close to 50-50, but Lee Sin is a strong enough deck to where if you pilot it well and build it well, you will beat all of these decks down here, simply because your deck is built better than the opponent's deck, or you play better and have stronger cards. Next up here is going to be... Next up here is going to be Victor. So Victor can win a major, but is most likely going to be out in top 32, top 16. I shit on Victor a lot because I think it's a fraud deck. It is a very fraud deck. That does not mean I think Victor is a bad deck. And I'm actually starting to lean towards Victor as a bad deck because of the decks I have. I've tried refining Victor, and I've tried building Victor, and his cards just don't look good. His cards just look not great. It looks like you can just build better decks in other colors. But with that aside, that obviously needs a lot more testing. As of right now in this current meta, which is what this tier list is for, Victor is a fraud deck. It is completely overhyped. It is a good deck. It is not a bad deck. Victor is going to beat all of these decks. Victor is going to smash any Aurora deck because they played the card Cole in the main deck. And then Victor will just win games sometimes because they go, oops, I have Stratagem, or oops, I have Fox, and your opponent didn't play around it. It falls into the same category as Kai'Sa, where you play enough removal spells to where unexperienced players or players that are on not refined decks will simply just lose to your removal spells. They will lose to your above rate mid to late game cards like Fox, Comet, Singularities, and Stratagems. But you're just a weak deck. Your deck is not very strong with Victor. Your cards suck. Your cards suck a whole lot. You have problems getting over a 3 might unit without having to invest a lot of spells now or high roll one of your biggest units in your deck. And overall, the deck is just not strong. It is not a good looking deck. Yeah, so it's going to fall under the can win a major, but most likely out in top 16, top 32 category, which is exactly where we've seen it fall in both tournaments so far. It was brought with over 100 decks on the first week and had an 8% conversion rate, and then it was brought with 70 decks, so it dropped in 30% of decks. It lost 30% of players going into week 2 because people realized the deck's not good. They're not as good as they think it is. And even then, it dropped to 70 players and went down to a 3% conversion rate. So, this deck is not good. Stop playing Victor. But it can win a major due to the fact that you do just play Cole, you do play Fox, you do play Singularities and Stratagems, and, sometimes you're just going to win the game because you're going to play against, players that do not know how to play into... they don't know how to play into the Victor strategy. They don't know how to play into a token strategy. So you will simply win those matchups into the inexperienced players or players that don't know how to play into Victor specific. That's it for that category. Now we're going to go into likely to win a major, but clearly has flaws. This category is going to be Teemo is up here. So Teemo is likely to win a major, but the flaw is your Kai'Sa matchup is not the greatest. You can beat Kai'Sa. Your Kai'Sa matchup is not 70, 30, 80, 20, super unwinnable. It's not good. Your Kai'Sa matchup is definitely not good because the problem with Teemo is you play a unit on a battlefield and then you hide stuff around it and all this, and then the Kai'Sa opponent just goes Hexray your unit, and you are now out of a battlefield, out of a hidden card. You can react with a hidden card, but it's most likely not going to be very good. And all in all, Teemo struggles into Kai'Sa, but Teemo is very good into a whole lot of the rest of the field. It's very good into Master Yi. It's the biggest counter to Master Yi outside of Leona. It's good into mid-range decks because of the amount of control you have in blue and purple with the things like Singularity, Fox in your late game, Comet again. You have a lot of high tempo and aggressive options if you play a hidden version that plays things like Nocturnes and the Monk that gets +2 whenever you unhide or play a hidden card here. You can just have really nice stats in the early to mid game. There's a lot of strategies where I saw a strategy where you just play Teemo as your only 2-drop, you choose to go second, and then turn 1 you play a Sprite's Call, conquer a battlefield, and then because you can just hide a Teemo from the champion zone, you don't have to bounce into your hand or anything. You can just hide a Teemo from your champion zone, the purple Teemo even, and then put it on a battlefield there, and now you're holding for 7 might on your opponent's turn, and they can't really deal with that. I've seen strategies like that, which are fairly good numbers. There's just a lot of ways that Teemo is very strong, but its flaws are just your Kai'Sa matchup's not the greatest, and the consistency of the Teemo deck is not the greatest right now. With more refinement, I can see it being a top choice for sure. A lot of ways to build the deck. Next up, likely to win but has some clear flaws is going to be the Set deck. So Set deck and the likely to win a major but has clear flaws. Set's biggest flaw is that he is hard to play and he is hard to build. That's basically it. Set is an extremely strong deck. I would put it in the expect to win majors category, outside of the fact that he is just not the easiest deck to play. So if you haven't been playing Set or have a lot of reps on Set, it's going to be very easy for you to not fall or not get into the category of expected to win a major. You're probably not going to win a major. You will lose a game to your own misplays, and then sometimes you will lose a game to your deck not drawing enough spells or kind of losing to itself potentially. And you can't afford to do that in tournaments if you can play the Set deck well. If people understood how to play the Set deck well, I put it in likely to win because there's going to be somebody, hopefully soon, that understands how to play Set, understands how to play it well, builds a deck that's built well, and they will take Set in top 8 with it, and then likely win the major with it. Again, in my Meta Monday article that I put out today that you should go check out, I put on there that both Darius and Set are likely to win, or are fully expected to top 8 in upcoming major. I fully expect to see either a Darius Hook or a Set deck make top 8 of one of the majors coming up here, assuming people are actually looking at decks not named Yi and not named Kaisa and not named Aurora, which I don't think they are right now in China, which, you know, early meta, understandable. They've had less than a month with the cards to figure out decks and play patterns. I get it, but hopefully somebody out there is spending the time to refine and learn the play patterns of these Darius and Set decks, and you will expect them to win a major. Which brings us to the last deck in this category, which is going to be Dubious, or Darius Hook. So, exact same thing as Set, that is very likely to win a major. Its flaws are you have to build it with Hook, which is the first, which shouldn't be a flaw, but people have not caught on that you kind of have to play Hook Darius. And then 2, you have to know how to play the matchups. You have to know how to abuse the certain spots of the Kaisa and the Master Yi deck, but it is strong into Yi. It beats Yi. It's fine into Kaisa. If you go first with Darius and you have Hook, you are super favored. It is the most broken deck in the game. Strongest deck in the entire game if you have Hook on 2, or if you go Captain on 1, Hook on 2. Basically, I'm saying if you high roll as the Darius deck, you will win every game against any matchup. Like, you are the most broken deck doing the most broken thing by going turn 1 Captain, turn 2 Hook, right? Or just like turn 1 anything, turn 2 Hook, find Captain, find Matron, find Darius, or find Draven. Like, you are a very broken deck when you have Hook online, and you are like fairly favored into Kaisa when you do have that Hook online. The downside and flaws are if you go second and don't have Hook, your deck is not favored into Kaisa. If you don't have Hook and go first, you're still fairly even with Kaisa. Like, you're slightly unfavored, but it's not like you will lose. And with these super greedy Kaisa lists that we're seeing, even without having Hook, if you go first, you're going to be in a fairly fine spot into Kaisa, and it's going to be fairly even. And then, of course, if you ever do draw that Hook early or have a Hook at a meaningful time frame, then the deck is going to be really strong. So now the last one is expected to win majors. We can put Kaisa and Master Yi up here. These are, everyone knew this when you clicked on the tier list video. You knew Kaisa and Master Yi were going to be at the top. I do not think this means that they will be in the top forever. Kaisa, I think, will probably in the top for expected to win majors all the way through Set 1. I don't think she will be, you know, undisputed number 1, tier 0, 30% play rate, 22% conversion rate deck. But I think right now in the meta, which again is what this tier list is based on, Kaisa and Yi are the champions due to that they are noob stomper decks and unrefined deck stomper decks. Meaning that Master Yi gives you free stats, a free stat baseline, and in any early meta for a card game, and against players that are not, you know, extremely high practiced in the specific card game, free stats is an extremely good baseline to have, because it says if you build a deck, you have to build a deck or practice with your deck good enough to be able to beat my free stats and my baseline of stats of, you know, +2 on any given unit. And that's not the easiest thing to do at the moment when you are brand new to a card game, brand new to the card pool. I think once people start refining cards, I think Yi drops down to like, you know, can win a major, but outside 16. But even I could see him just staying in this likely to win a major category. I don't think he drops down to like can't day 2 or something. You know, I think playing Master Yi will always give you the chance to day 2 and top 16 to top 8. But as decks get better, this deck gets much worse. As we see the Set decks become or start making better numbers and better spell ratios, they are beating the Master Yi decks. What Lee Sin is beating Master Yi because it is a bigger Master Yi version. So if you can avoid the pitfalls of the early games into Master Yi, you just simply become a better Master Yi variant. Same with like Leona's just dominates Master Yi. So if people can figure out the Kai'Sa matchup with Leona or refine Leona to not auto-fold to other decks, Leona shoots up, which brings Master Yi down. But at the moment, that's why Master Yi is good. And then Kai'Sa is fairly similar in the sense of she's extremely efficient tempo deck that has really good removal spells and asks you, hey, how are you going to deal with Falling Star? How are you going to deal with my efficient removal spells? And then how are you going to deal with my Fox in the late game coming in accelerated? And a lot of decks either can't do that, but most likely a lot of decks don't have an extremely obvious good way to do that, which is why Kai'Sa is dominating so much right now. Again, I think Lee Sin beats Kai'Sa. I think he answers both of those questions very well. I think Leona can beat Kai'Sa by answering those questions fairly well. I think that like Volibear and the Aurora decks beat Kai'Sa because they answer those questions very well. I just don't think these decks are refined enough to beat the majority of the meta. To be in these like higher tier categories. And again, I don't think Kai'Sa will ever drop below. I think Kai'Sa will stay in the expected to win majors category for the entirety of set 1. I think for her to drop out of expected to win majors category, there would have to be an extreme, like some extreme tech to be discovered that we aren't even in like the vicinity of sniffing out at the moment, because not because Kai'Sa looks so broken, but because Kai'Sa's cards and numbers do just look good. I think these are the first 2 decks that we have fully refined, which is also giving them such a big edge in the tournaments right now. I also think it's expected for them to win because they are such a huge majority of the tournament right now. I think, like, I see people saying, oh, we're in a Kai'Sa Master Yi meta. Every tournament is Kai'Sa Master Yi in top 8, and then every tournament is Kai'Sa winning, blah, blah, blah. But, like, you have to realize that, yes, Kai'Sa is a very strong deck right now, one of the best decks because she was refined first, like the first, good refined deck, in my opinion. But also, when your tournament is 30% Kai'Sas, and she's a noob stomper deck early, like, yes, when you have over 50% of the day 2 decks being Kai'Sa, the odds of one of those decks winning the tournament is going to be extremely high compared to the one Volibear we saw make day 2. Granted, he still got 13th place. He bubbled out of top 8 because it's a single elimination, top 64. But if Volibear hit Kai'Sa, 6 games in a row and then didn't lose to himself, then the Volibear deck very much could have won. It's just to have one of the 34 Kai'Sa players have above average matchups and variants is much more likely than to have exactly the one Volibear player have that, or one of the 3 Victor players, or one of the 4 Darius players or something. Right, so also understandable that these decks are winning majors because they have such a high play rate and such a high conversion rate at the moment for all the reasons listed prior, that them winning makes a lot of sense. And then the last champion and last deck and expected to win is Misfortune Aurora. This is Misfortune Aurora. If you don't agree with this, she is automatically in the likely to win but has clear flaws. The only flaw with Misfortune Aurora is that she auto loses to Victor. Now, before this upcoming week, I would definitely just put her in the likely to win, but has clear flaws in losing to Victor. I think after seeing the trends of Victor, and people realizing and coming to terms with what I've been telling them for weeks, and that Victor is a fraud deck, and is not as good as people think it is, we're watching the play rate of Victor plummet. Like, it's like the American stock market a few months ago. Like, it's just going to hell. So with that, I fully expect MF to start winning majors, and either this next week or the 4th week, when I'm sure we're going to see the stats on this upcoming week's tournament, and Victor is going to go from whatever the percent, I think it was like a 14% overall play rate of the tournament, like 70 decks, to down to closer to like 50 decks or less, like 10% of the meta at most. And if 10% of the deck of the tournament is Victor, you're likely not going to hit more than one Victor. And the thing about Victor is, because the deck is not very good once it plays against good decks, is the more you win on day 1, the higher odds you're going to dodge a Victor is on day 1. Because if you're in the 4-0 bracket with Misfortune, the amount of 4-0 Victors out of those 50 Victors is going to be like 10 at most, right? Like there's going to be like 10 victors at most in the 4-0 bracket or something. Like, and that's an extremely high number still. Like I think if you start 3-0 or 4-0 out of your 7-round tournament, your odds of there's going to be like 1 or 2 victors at the undefeated top tables with you, and you can just simply dodge them. Or what happens is you take your 1 loss to the victor in day 1, and then you just beat up on Kai'Sa's for the last round or 2, or Kai'Sa and Yi, or Kai'Sa Yi, Teemo set, whatever. And you're fine. The fact that Misfortune dominates Kai'Sa is expected to win is amazing, because if you do make it to day 2 with Misfortune, with over 50% of the field being being Kai'Sa, and because you have such a good Master Yi matchup with, I think it was like 59 of the 64 decks, all but 7 of them were Kai'Sa and Yi, your odds of hitting only Kai'Sa and Yi are so incredibly high that there's a good chance you simply just hit 6 Kai'Sa and Yi in a row and just dominate them. And even if not, the only deck you have to care about in day 2 is going to be victors, and we saw 3 victors in day 2. So as long as you dodge the 3 of victors out of your 63 opponents there, you can hit any 1 in 60 on any deck that isn't Kai'Sa, that isn't Victor, and you're going to be fine with Aurora. I also think Aurora decks are getting more refined now. We've ran a lot of numbers on Aurora and ran it through some like Monte Carlo simulators, and effectively Misfortune Aurora is built, or can be built in a way, the way we've built it, as around a 50% chance to turn 3 in Aurora. So in about half of your games, slightly more, give or take for some noise, and around half of your games, you're going to turn 3 in Aurora. And then in 89% of your games, you're going to turn 4 in Aurora. So, the odds of you missing on a turn 4 Aurora is so high that, it's just not going to happen more than once a set, basically. If you go to 3 games in your set, you will maybe miss out on a turn 4 Aurora, once in 2 sets, effectively. Once in 3 sets, really, is, the closest. If you go to game 3 and all 3 games in 3 rounds, you will not turn 4 in Aurora or turn 3 in Aurora in one of those 9 games, basically, is how I would look at it. So, in a 7-round tournament, that means if you have to go to game 3 in all 7 rounds, there are going to be 3 games max that you don't turn 4 in Aurora, but that's also not accounting for the games that you will automatically win by just 50% of your games. You're going to simply, have a turn 3 Aurora, and no deck is beating a turn 3 Aurora right now. So that's why she's an expected to win a major category, because Victor is on the downfall. He should continue to keep on the downtrend as far as play rate and conversion rate, and then Misfortune just skyrockets up from that. And I think once people build their deck better and start using math instead of just vibes, and stop putting things like 3 Gorger in their deck, and stop putting things like 3 Snapvines in their deck, then we will see Misfortune just start to dominate even. So yeah, that's the tier list. That is the full competitive tier list right now for how I think decks are in the meta. Again, go check out my Meta Monday for a full recap of the meta, recap of the tournaments as far as play rates, conversion rates, what won, all of that type of fun stuff. I'll probably be doing this about once a month or so, or if there is a really big meta shakeup, expect I'm not going to pump out tier list videos just to do them for fun. I'll put one out now. I'll probably put one out closer to the launch, or after if there's major tournaments in October for China. I'll put them out again there, and then I'll put one out again probably closer to December for the first majors in America and Lincoln. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Go check out my Meta5 for all the good stuff if you're trying to advance yourself and complete any quest before you get to the Riftbound majors and give yourself the highest odds to win the Riftbound majors. Go check out the Meta5, join my Discord, because we're talking in there about Riftbound every day. A lot of information, a lot of questions get answered. We talk about the meta, we talk about deck choices, all that fun stuff. That's going to be it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one.